As long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that.
Luxury brands have built their reputation on three key things: exclusivity, quality, and heritage. You know the story. Every bag is supposed to be handcrafted in a quiet European atelier by a seasoned artisan in a crisp white apron, right? That's what makes the $3,000 price tag feel justifiable. But in reality, most of these so-called made in Italy or made in France luxury goods, they're being made in China, in bulk, in massive factories that also happen to produce for other street brands. And now, thanks to a wave of TikTok videos coming straight out of Chinese manufacturing hubs, the entire operation is being exposed. What's even crazier is why these factory workers and suppliers in China are suddenly speaking out. This isn't random. It's not a marketing stunt or some kind of TikTok trend for clout. It's retaliation, the result of the ongoing tariff war between China and the US. Since trade tensions escalated, especially with high tariffs being slapped on Chinese exports, the cost of doing business has risen. Chinese manufacturers have seen Western brands increase prices and cut ties while still demanding cheap labor behind closed doors. So in response, some of these factories are now revealing who they're making products for and just how much those brands are profiting from their work. They're showing full production lines of handbags, shoes, wallets, sometimes even with the logos of luxury brands still visible. These videos aren't allegations, they're receipts.
Because first, our profit margin is very good, actually. So we are able to support them. And second, our factories all have 20 to 30 years experiences. The bags made by their hands are of better quality than those made in machinery. That is why. So if you are interested in bags, contact me. You will love the quality and you will love the price.
Let's break down exactly how this works. Most of the labor, from cutting and sewing to shaping, assembling, and finishing the product, happens in Chinese factories. These facilities are fully equipped, often running under contract with major fashion labels. They're not back alley shops. They're industrial-scale manufacturers capable of producing high-volume, high-quality goods. Brands send over raw materials, design specs, and hardware, like buckles, zippers, monogrammed buttons, and the Chinese factories handle nearly all of it. In many cases, the bags are 90 to 95% complete. But here's the trick. Once the product is just about finished, say it's missing a logo plate or a final polish, it gets shipped to Italy, France, or Switzerland. There, a final assembly step is done. This could be as minor as adding a strap, gluing a lining, or embossing a serial number inside the bag. It doesn't matter how small the step is. What matters is where that step physically happens. Because under EU labeling laws, the phrase "made in Italy" or "made in France" is legally allowed as long as the last substantial transformation of the product occurred there. And that phrase, substantial transformation, is so vague, it gives brands all the room they need to maneuver. So yeah, a bag that's been sitting in China for 98% of its creation suddenly becomes a Parisian luxury good because someone in France attached a zipper.
That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. You know, those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury. Now, close your eyes. Let's just do a little, very easy experiment in your head, okay? Imagine that you have an Hermes bag, and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China, while everything else, like leathers, zippers, and hardware, remain the same. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those luxury brands for too long. Welcome to the real world.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. These factory workers and suppliers in China aren't just trying to stir the pot. They're making a point. With the rise of U.S. sanctions and tariffs on Chinese goods, American brands are hiking their retail prices to protect profit margins while cutting costs behind the scenes. And many Chinese manufacturers feel like they're being used, forced to keep production costs low while brands pocket record profits. So they're fighting back with transparency. They're using TikTok and other Chinese platforms to post behind-the-scenes footage of luxury goods being made in their factories. And it's not just one-off clips. There's now an entire community of content creators doing this, showing stitching processes, bag molds, hardware stamping, even unbranded luxury shoes straight off the line. Some of these videos even break down the exact production costs, claiming a bag that sells for $35,000 costs just $1,250 to produce. And again, this isn't counterfeit merchandise. These are legit manufacturing contracts for the very same brands that sit behind glass in Paris and Milan. The message from these factory workers is simple. If we make it, why can't we show it? Here's how the math works. Let's say a brand places an order for 1,000 units of a high-end leather tote. The Chinese factory charges $200 to $400 per unit, depending on the complexity and materials. The goods are assembled, packaged, and shipped overseas. Once they hit a warehouse in Italy or France, a minor final touch is added. Let's say that adds another $50. So the total production cost? Roughly $450. That same bag walks into a boutique on Rodeo Drive or the Champs-Élysées and hits the shelf for $3,500, sometimes more. That's nearly an 800% markup, and most of that value comes from the branding, from the story, the country label, the aesthetic, and the belief that it was crafted with heritage and authenticity. Not just bags, split production across categories. Wallets, belts, sneakers, scarves, sunglasses. All kinds of luxury items use the same system. It's called split production, where parts of the product are manufactured in different countries. The lining might come from India, the hardware from Turkey, and the stitching from China. Then it all gets sent to Italy, where a button gets added. Boom. Made in Italy. Even leather that's labeled as Italian is often tanned or processed in Asia, then finished or dyed in Tuscany. It's like building a car in Japan and then installing a license plate in Germany and calling it German-made. It's not about quality. It's about marketing. Now, to be fair, the quality coming out of Chinese factories can be phenomenal. Many of these manufacturers meet or exceed global standards and produce goods at a level that rivals their European counterparts. The issue is deception. The fact that luxury brands are deliberately hiding where their goods are made, while charging premiums for European heritage and craftsmanship that often didn't happen at all. What you're really paying for isn't the product. You're paying for the illusion, the ambiance, the backstory that makes you feel like you're owning a piece of fashion history, when in reality you just bought something off a well-run Chinese production line that passed through Italy for an hour and got a label sewn in. The luxury industry has been operating this way for years, but now that factory workers are exposing the truth, especially in retaliation over trade wars and rising tariffs, the illusion is cracking. And unless laws around labeling and supply chain transparency change, it'll keep happening. So next time you see a Made in Italy label on a $4,000 handbag, just know it may have spent a lot more time in Guangzhou than it ever did in Florence. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more viral news.